Good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome. I'm Keanna Faircloth, host of The Pulse and Afternoon Jazz on WBGO, of course, 88.3 FM. And I'm super excited tonight. I'm always super excited, but I'm really excited tonight because my brother, Aaron Myers, is in the house. He is, oh gosh, you're going to get to know this Renaissance man in just a second, but he is what I like to call an artivist, an artist and an activist. He has a brand new album called the Pride Album. And we are celebrating that tonight for this Black Music Month and Pride Month edition of The Pulse. And we're also going to talk about his new book. He actually is an author as well. On top of everything else, this man is now an author as well. But let's get to know him. Let's bring him up in here. Aaron L. Myers, welcome to The Pulse.
Hello. Glad to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. I feel like you're a little piece of home.
And I'm good to know somebody up there in the big city. I would say. And very proud and happy for you and of you, especially seeing all the tireless work you have put in to this genre of music. Doing the research for this album, I was starkly reminded by industry marketing professionals that jazz only makes up 0.8 to 1.1% of consumed music in the country. Mm-hmm. And I like to remind them that might be the case with some statistics, but the people who do support this music and love this genre of all ages, and to see people in my age bracket down here with us who actually love it, understand it, are educated about it, are passionate about it. It's so good to have that person who's doing what you're doing now. And I'm very appreciative.
Thank you so much. Well, we have something in common in WPFW. Not only is Aaron a vocalist, entrepreneur, activist, author now, he's also a radio host at WPFW, which is where I cut my teeth. So let's start with that. Let's talk about, your show, what you're doing, Jazz Stories on WPFW.
Yeah, Jazz Stories every Thursday from 3 to 5. And it started with me and Amy Borman, as you know, who is a phenomenal pianist and presenter herself. She does the Washington Women in Jazz Festival. And she just she's also a label owner now. She has her own, I think, Strange Woman Records. So, I mean, she's a wonderful person. During the pandemic, she stepped back to focus on artistry and her family to make sure that was all straight, and I've held down the fort. So you can hear me, and I try to make it a point on the show to showcase primarily people who are living in Washington. I mean, artists that are alive in Washington, D.C. And so I try to encourage all artists, if you got something new, to let me know. Let's get it on the air. Let's get an interview. How important it is to be able to be on an FM station during drive time, during the day, and to have your music played at that time can be pivotal for a person's career. And it's important for people in Washington and across the nation to realize that outward facing, there is something and there's life happening here within this genre. It's not just museum pieces and throwbacks and pullbacks. There's real music being made right now by artists who live here. And I was told when I was in Russia, I was told that they considered artist airports, or 3 of the artist airports they consider is DCA, Dulles, and BWI. They say on Tuesdays and Fridays, you see more musicians in those airports because they're all leaving to go on tour at different places. And you know as well as I do that this area is robust with touring artists. So we have a lot of music to play. Yeah. And we do play people from New York and New Jersey as well, especially if you have something going on around here. So, yeah.
Of course, man, that's amazing. I'm so excited that you're doing that on the air. You have such, this presence about you. I remember when I first saw you, I don't think you were performing, but it might have been at a DC Jazz Festival event, I think at an embassy or something or another.
The Austrian embassy, I think, maybe. I'm not sure which one.
But you have a great memory. You have a great memory. But yeah, I remember just being, I was like, wow, he's such a presence. Like I wanted to know you. I wanted to know what you did. You just seemed like such a, you took up space, which I really admire, I guess I should say, because I was like, wow, this man is, he's wow, who is he? You know? So many people know who you are in different arenas because you are an activist, you are a proponent for mental health, you stand up for the LGBTQI community, you have even run for mayor, I learned, in your hometown of Texas. And gosh, what you do, it just touches so many different people. How did you find yourself? Because you always grew up playing piano, from what I understand, but how did you make that decision to become a musician, a jazz musician, as you are now?
I didn't know that doing art or entertainment could be done full time. I thought that was something that could only happen that could only happen in the movies. I would watch, my favorite television show growing up was I Love Lucy. And I loved it because Ricky was a band leader. That was his job. His job was to go down to the Coco Cabana and do his show, come home. It had a one-bedroom apartment, him and his wife, child, best friends with the owner of the building, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm like, that was like, okay, this can happen. Then they took that trip to Hollywood, and I was like, oh my God, they go into, and they're meeting Bill Holden and all these people, you know, what's that boy's name? Wayne, John Wayne. I'm not a fan of John Wayne, but they met him. And so like, you know, I was like, wow, and they went to Paris and took him overseas, and it was all his music doing this. And I thought, man, that could only happen on television, you know. Once it dawned upon me that my talent could lend more to my livelihood other than being a church musician. I could actually play the music that I really love. Gospel music is in my heart, and it's a part of who I am. I could never get rid of that. Classical music is a music that I admire. It's like watching someone put together a puzzle or play a chess game. But jazz is something that I like to do. I like to be in the arena with that. And once I knew that was a possibility, I would say around 2004, 2005. So about 16 years ago, when I got to Hollywood, that's when I knew that I could do that specifically. Because when I went to Hollywood, I originally went to do comedy. I was doing stand-up. I was doing extra work. Oh, yeah, at the Comedy Store. Yep. I started doing the open mic. They used to get 3 minutes. You go on Sundays and Mondays. You sign up, and there was 40 slots, but only 20 people could get chosen. This is when Mitzi Shore was still alive. Polly had not come back to mind the store. She had just been diagnosed with Parkinson's, I believe. I think it's Parkinson's what she had. And so you had people like Andrew Dice Clay was coming through. I remember when Richard Pryor died, we all went to the Comedy Store that night. It was dark. I mean, a lot of great comedians. I remember Cat Williams' mother. I believe that was his mother who saw me do a show there at one time, and she was like, I like your brand of blackness because it's not hood. I didn't grow up in the hood, so I could not talk about hood stuff in a sense. You know, I could only talk about my experience from my black experience, which is partly why I wrote the book. And so, like, I wanted to find my way, and the only way I could figure it out was just to go by what I'd seen. And I'd seen my family be active in the community, had to be what I only called a responsible citizen. They voted, they understood what was going on, they read the paper, my grandparents and so on. And I knew that this art could do something. So once I figured out this art could pay a bill or two, child, I jumped at the opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's taken me all over the world. So I'm very happy.
It absolutely has. But before all of that, you know, taking it back to, you know, when you started out, just, you know, dabbling on the piano as a very young child and eventually deciding to join the Army. From there, let's start from there, because I found that to be very interesting, that you seem to be a very creative child growing up, but then you decided to do something so structured as to join the Army.
Well, I went to the Army for a very selfish reason. I did not I did not like school. And it's taken years of therapy to understand what this taste was. Um, I loved the opportunity to go to school, to interact with other people,
The social
to
aspect.
socialize big time, because all of the people, I was predominantly raised around my grandparents. And in that familiar dynamic, I guess you could say, the family dynamic, I had a role of responsibility. You know, I knew more my senior year in high school. I knew more about doctor's appointments, about how medicine should be structured. I'd been the minister of music of a church since I was 12. So that means you're in the leadership of a church. So I was meeting with pastors, playing for funerals, even counseling at 13, 14, 15. I never will forget, I think I was a sophomore in high school. I went to my friend who was a few houses down. I was to meet him at his place. I got to his house a little early, and his mother was at the kitchen table crying. Well, her husband had just whooped her. She didn't know what to do. And I'm praying and counseling with her and telling her, okay, well, you know, your abuser, this can sometimes escalate to death, and you have babies you got to protect. What are you going to do? How do we get you at now? My friend walks in. He's like, what's going on here? I'm like, you just go to your room, friend.
And you were what?
So me and mother, I'm like 14, 15.
Wow.
And we're figuring this thing out, you know? And what I won't forget about that particular moment, she herself had been writing. She'd been writing about angels. And she had 3 manuscripts about this big in her closet that she was afraid to do anything with. And I'm not even sure if she ever published them or not, but she'd written. And I remember how down and depressed she was. And it made sense because her husband was whooping her, you know, and she had these 5 kids. What do? You got 5 kids, you're in the country town, your husband's whooping you, you are a creative. And I took that moment to counsel, and she listened. She listened, you know, and a few weeks later, she left her husband and she got to safety.
Wow. At 14 years old.
14.
To encourage her to do that. Wow. You've always had a way with people then.
And so going to school was like, I could be around people my age, but it sucked at that moment because I was still the minister of music of the church. So nobody wanted to get too close to me. Only reason girls wanted to be close to me is because they knew they told their parents they were with me, then their parents could figure that everything was going to be fine and I was going to be responsible. So that was it. But I decided to go to the military because I did not want to go back into school. I wanted to do something different, and I had been called pretty much a sissy, soft my entire life, and I needed to, you know, get strong. And I felt the Army could do that, and it would pay for college. Little did I know that September 11th would happen while I was in basic training.
Wow.
And so, I mean, that basic training turned from a rough day at track practice to Vietnam basic overnight.
Oh my gosh.
Overnight. It changed. And I will never forget, I had gone to, people always ask, what were you doing September 11th? September 11th, I was preparing to do what they call Valley Forge. And that's like the last big hike that you do in basic training in the Army. And you have to go to the doctor first to get checked out to make sure that you can actually do it. And I was on the bus, and I never forget what was playing on the way there at Fort Jackson was Feels Like a Woman. That's what was playing. And I got into the doctor's office, and I felt that it was odd that they were watching a movie. It didn't seem right because what was going on seemed to be movie-ish. And I got back to my barracks, and I was given a loaded M16 and told to go and guard the post commander's office. And I said, okay. And I was given passwords, and there was a full bird colonel, a little short black man, who tried to, I guess, test it in a sense. He did not know the password. I had to square up on him. And I said, either get back or get shot. Like, you go back and talk to your superior and get the proper password. And so he did. He came back and he tried to be snarky. I said, keep it moving, or I can get you out of here. Just keep it moving. And so on the way back from there, it was a 12-hour shift almost. On the way back to my to the Starship, I jumped on the phone by the mess hall, and I called Mother. I said, "What the hell is going? What's going on?" And she said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine. What's going on?" And she told me what had happened.
Wow.
And it became oh so real of what we people in theory, and especially in jazz and in music and in the arts. I know a lot of us are pacifists. I'm on WPFW for heaven's sake. So I understand that being passive is an important thing, and to do no harm in theory would be beautiful if it was a reality, but it's not. And I'm grateful to know we live in a country that if a war was to break out today, this country would be able to fight on each continent without sparing one National Guard person. The homeland would still be protected. So we have the most powerful army and military in the world right now. So it's a good thing to know that that is the source of the privilege we have to be pacifist. So we can be passive with privilege.
Right. So you had no idea that, things would kick off in the way that they did when you signed up. So you stayed for 2 years, and then after that, you went to college and ended up, and of course, all of this, by the way, is in the book, by the way.
Yes,
Talk Tales and Lessons Learned.
Show the people.
Right. Which we'll get to in just a second, because the way he lays it out it's such a great read. But all of this is in the book. I'm curious to know, what gave you the audacity to want to run for mayor? Were you still in college at the time when you decided to do that?
When I was in the military, the internet cafes became the thing, and you used to go to the library on base, and newspapers had just started to publish their papers online. And so I would go home, I would go to the library, and I would look up what was happening back where I was from, of course, Keanna. And at that time, if I'm not mistaken, the mayor had resigned. The city manager had been fired, and 2 city council people had been recalled. And so when I got back to Corsicana, I was somewhat hip to what had been going down. And there was a guy, I won't call his name because he's rich, but I'll say his first name, Scott. It could be Scott anybody, Scott. Scott mentioned and kind of said that, Aaron, you and I could do a better job running this place. And elections were coming up. I said, we could. I said, I would love to, it'd be good to elevate the conversation, And so he said, Aaron, let's talk about this. Meet me at the country club if you could, but make sure you wear your jacket and make sure you look good. I said, okay. And I went and I cleaned up. I had a white Ford Ranger I wasn't paying for, but I was washed it up and I cleaned the rims, I got to the country club. I had on my jacket and I was looking what I felt was decent. And he came out in tennis shorts. And other people had on Wranglers and jeans. And he said, well, how you feel, Aaron? I said, well, I feel actually overdressed. He said, well, you have to. He said, my mother would like to talk to you. She has some work she would love for you to do. I was like, okay. And I'm getting over the whole overdressed situation. I go to his mother's home and she was like, yeah, Aaron, Scott tells me you're a great worker. You see those leaves out there? I want somebody to clean them. I said, what? No. And so I went and I faxed his mother a letter of declination. I did not want to do any work with you. And I talked to my government teacher about the incident, I said, he needs to run. She said, actually, Aaron, what's stopping you from running? Like, you know what, you have all of these opinions. Go ahead and put your money where your mouth is. And so I said, I left her class and drove right down to City Hall where you put your paperwork in. And it was a Black woman who was the city secretary. And I said, well, I want to know, I need to fill out the paperwork. I want to run for office, run for mayor. And she began to whisper. She took me into a back room. She says, are you sure this is something that you want to do? I said, yes, absolutely. And she said, well, you have about 2 weeks if you change your mind, but I'm so proud of you. And
No.
it meant so much to her. And to me, I was too young and stupid to realize that I was going to be running for mayor in one of the most extremely racist places in the state of Texas. The KKK was still active. And I was just too young to know better. And so I did it.
Wow. Incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, and of course, again, all of this is in the book, by the way, Tall Tales and Lessons Learned. From there, you ended up eventually in Hollywood working in music.
Yeah. I left after I left first. I had gotten an internship. I had gotten an internship at the Radio Television Museum of History in New York. And I said, okay, before I go to New York, I want to try LA. And so I had a 1988 Chevy S10. And I drove it for winter break to Hollywood. And it served two purposes. From Texas. And
Wow.
and there was no cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone. I printed out my direction on MapQuest. And remember MapQuest, right? So
Yeah.
I had a map. And I stopped at all the truck stops, like at Abilene, and I called home, said I'm here, and I was going to try to I made it into Tucson before I had to pull over and just go to sleep, you know. But I did it for two reasons: because I wanted to go to Hollywood to see what Hollywood was giving, but I hadn't seen my father since I was 6, and my father lived there, and if the mountain won't come to Muhammad, Muhammad must go to the mountain. And so I went to him there, met him there as an adult. And that's when the dynamic, I think, of my entire life changed, because it became very apparent as I was driving, especially as I was coming out of Palm Springs. Then it dawned upon me that all of these cities and towns and places that I read about in books that seem so far away can only get closer if you go to them. And nothing was keeping me from going there. And once I got into Hollywood and got in the house, I stayed in the Hollywood hostel that's now torn down off of Highland Avenue. I stayed in a room with 4 people.
Wow.
And with my truck. And it was in that moment I realized that I do not have to be in a space or a position where no one understands my language, where no one else shares my passion, when no one else may understand my drive. When you have an infrastructure with the same sense of urgency that you need to thrive, it was there. One thing that wasn't there, YouTube, Netflix, Hulu, Black Hollywood was this big. Now, right now it ain't but this big, but it was this big at that time. We all would go to the Abbey. We would go to the Abbey on Sunday evenings in West Hollywood. And I had gotten an audition with William Morris to get an agent. This is before William Morris and Endeavor merged. And this guy told me that they already had a Columbus short type. I said, I don't look anything like Columbus. What the hell are you talking about? But then it became apparent to me that when those decision makers are white and we all look alike to them,
typecast.
That's the exact definition of typecasting. And so there was no YouTube shows to be created. Tyler Perry had started doing those plays, and those plays were doing considerably well. And we were all buying them for $40 a pop on DVD and VHS. And so it was no work. And the theater scene in LA did thrive a bit. It was very similar entrepreneurially then as it is here in Washington now. And I played the piano for some shows while I was there. And then I was music supervisor for a film called A Song and a Prayer that never got published, but I did the work nonetheless. And so it was an interesting time. I learned so much about this industry, but I also learned that Hollywood was not a jazz town. There was like 6 places that you could play jazz at that time there, and all the people who were playing jazz in those places had their spots for 40 years, 30 years. So you're waiting for someone to fall and break a hip or something so that you could slide in there and
Right.
do something. So yeah, that's how I got to Hollywood. I learned so
Interesting.
much, so
So
much.
eventually you found your way to Washington, D.C. You started doing some work with the Obama campaign.
I
Tell me about that because now that's basically your home base. Washington,
right.
D.C. is where you've landed for sure.
Oh yes. Oh, I decided to make this my home. This is my home. I love it. While in Hollywood, I did some. I was the minister of music for the youth department at West Angeles Church of God in Christ, which is a fairly large church there. And one of the young people I worked with had mentioned this guy named Barack Obama to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, honey, I said, I think he's a Muslim first of all. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't think this country's ready to have him as, it's Hillary's turn, and he should do what any good Democrat should do and wait his turn and let her do what she needs to do so we can move our country forward. We already had a black president. His name was Bill Clinton. And so he told me to get this book called Dreams of My Father. And I got the book,
Mm-hmm.
and it dawned on me that someone had done some similar things that I had done and lived a similar life that I had lived with an absent father whose picture was everywhere, but you never saw and was never with him. And I remember in fourth grade, I said, I want to be the first black president. I said, but there's no need to wait that long if this fella can do it. So I went to Borders Books on Sunset and Vine at the time. And The Audacity of Hope had come out. And I began reading some of that. And I decided that year, in 2007, I said I always did a birthday party and I tied it to a charity of some sort, to raise money for it. But this time I said I wanted to do it as a pre-election party for Barack Obama. Now, Magic Johnson, I believe, was having a partner for Hillary that night in Hollywood. And I was going to do it at Center Space on Hollywood and Gayley. And my partners at the time, they were like, Aaron, you have to do this. This is your baby. You have to finance this. I said, no problem. Had live music all the way. I had DJ Gumsoul was going to DJ in the back for me. So everything was set. And Prince Rudolph Kanais Melikoff had come, half the cast from I Love New York, Tiffany Pollard's people. They were out there. And Chance, especially the brothers, Real and Chance, they were there. They were friends of mine. And so about a quarter after 11:30, the bouncer came and got me. I had put the party up on a thing called Mabo, which is mybarackobama.com. They had usurped MySpace, which was popular at that time. And he said, you should see this. And I looked over the balcony, and there was a line wrapped around the building. And I said, okay, now if people in Hollywood during a primary would be interested in Barack Obama, then he's going to do something well, because no one in Hollywood cares about politics too much. So Hollywood at that point was starting to kick my entire black behind. Okay, I was getting my behind handed to me. And mother said, well, why don't you come home, regroup, go back. I went home on a Thursday or Friday. That Sunday, I was at my grandparents' and the phone rang on the landline. And it was the Barack Obama campaign. They had heard that a few years earlier that I had run for office there in the county. And they felt that I could help them get into the county since the Democratic Party there seemed already aligned with Hillary Clinton. I said, okay, well, if you want to make this serious, there's a debate happening in Austin. I want to go to this debate. I don't want nosebleed seats. I want to sit on the floor. And yes. I said, you will pay me. And the last thing you will never do again is call any household in the state of Texas about politics on a Sunday evening. This is the Lord's Day, and we're eating dinner. Thank you very much. And I hung up the phone. And that following week or so, I was in Austin at the debate. I sat right behind Lyndon Johnson, LBJ's daughter. And I saw the debate happen in person. At that time, everyone thought that Barack Obama was going to choose John Edwards as his running mate. And people thought that Hillary Clinton would have chosen the former governor of New Mexico, I forget his name, as her vice president. But Nancy Pelosi had told us, quite frankly, that it would not be a joint ticket. So I worked for the primary in Navarre County, and we won the caucuses because Texas does a vote in the caucus. Barack won the caucuses. And I served on the nomination at large committee for the state Democratic convention. After that was over, they asked me if I would work in Florida, in South Florida. And I said, yes, I would work down there. And it was very apparent that there were a lot of Republicans who were Republicans truly in name only, so they could have some say in their local jurisdiction. But also, there are some Republicans who genuinely did support the candidate, Senator Obama at that time. So I created a group down there called Republicans for Obama, so that they could have space to come out. And I asked the campaign if they would give me a surrogate. And they gave me Susan Eisenhower, which helped me a great deal, Dwight Eisenhower's granddaughter. And so after the campaign was over, a number of us had been promised jobs here in Washington. And John Conyers, who those in jazz should know because it's because of him we have HR 57 and we had the original Jazz Caucus. And he chaired, was on the board of directors for a thing called the Global Family Program that was headed up by Linda Grover, who was a writer. And the Global Family Program was a kind of an NGO. They were founded, the words "One Day of Peace and Sharing" in the Declaration of Peace from the United Nations. And she was dying of uterine cancer, and they needed someone to fill her position as we were going toward Global Family Day, which is January 1st. Gus Shoemaker had recommended me to John Conyers, and Linda Grover saw me. They flew me out for a week. And on Friday, they said, I can't go. You need to stay. And I've been here ever since.
Wow. Incredible. So since then, you now have been a fixture, it seems, on the jazz scene in DC, but still, you know, being true to yourself, being the activist that you are. And I really feel like this album is sort of, you know, just the combination of your entire walk of life here. Of course, it speaks to, you know, those things that you're most passionate about, you know, the activism, racism. The Pride album itself speaks to the Black experience. And Pride, I'm going to start there with the title because it has multiple meanings based on the music that you've compiled here, both original compositions and classics as well. So let's talk about sort of this album. It's your fourth album?
Mm-hmm. The fourth album.
Yeah, and the meaning behind the Pride album.
So the meaning behind the Pride album, I thought of what Maya Angelou had stated, that, you know, when she would walk on stage, she'd walk and it'd be crowded because all of her ancestors were there. And so I am a Leo, and as a Leo, I've always had Leo-themed titles, Leo Rising, you know, Lion's Den. And so I knew that I wanted something that represented the family. But my pride, since I'm so far away from my family, have been my ancestors. And so understanding the ancestors was a big portion of that. And on the album cover, as I have here, all of the faces that are there are those who've already gone on before me. Direct line, all the way back to 1824, to Gilbert Myers. And with that, I wanted to have a word that could identify not only just the family, but to the completeness of who I am. I am bi, you know, I'm very open about that as well. That would help to show off the family. Sometimes you have to choose when you don't have the luxury of being in touch with your ancestors, or sometimes not having the strength to know that your ancestors did have your back, in a sense, I guess you could say. And so when I put the album together, I wanted it to be an invitation, after hearing it, for both you to join my family, my tribe, my pride. And I was hoping that after hearing the music, that someone out there would invite me to join their pride, their tribe, their family. And I felt that during this pandemic, as many other people were on the cusp of losing their minds, I had a therapist, counselor, and a psychiatrist throughout this whole situation. My
Mm-hmm.
anxiety was through the roof. And I already lived with that and health anxiety. And then I told a friend overnight, my Facebook page turned into an obituary page. And I started seeing family members and if you know anything about village community, village members that I've known my entire life who loved me even when, who were dying from this, who were not all necessarily old with comorbidities. So I needed to figure out a way to cope with this. And my therapist asked me about my practicing. And many people forget you are a pianist, you are a concert pianist. And I had forgotten how to rehearse. We discovered that I had only, for the last 13 years at least, had been rehearsing for gigs, for church. I had not rehearsed for myself in such a long time.
Right.
And so we set up a structure of me doing some centered breathing and stretching, going down to the piano, sitting with my hands on the keys for at least 30 minutes, at least. Nothing was mandated to come, but I needed to be there and be used to being there. And from there, I discovered my voice again. And I remembered and was put back in touch that growing up, when it seemed as if I had no friends to relate to, the piano did. In the military, when I had no one to relate to and to express my fear or angst, the piano did. While in Hollywood, while stressed out, the piano understood. And then when coming to Washington with no family here, being alone, not being a part of the club. I didn't go to Howard. I didn't go to Duke Ellington. I didn't go to none of the other stuff. I was here trying to get in on the scene where I could fit in a sense, with a Southern accent. I needed the piano to kind of be that person to kind of help me. And it was at that moment I began to reconnect. And that's how this album came. The Jazz Coalition in New York asked if gave me the Jazz Coalition grant, to write a song. And had I not been on that piano, I would not been able to write the song. And the song I wrote was "Don't Ask Me to Smile." That's the "Don't Ask" on the album. Was written because of that one. Yeah.
Wow. So the Pride album, tell me how you managed to put this out during an entire pandemic. First of all, it dropped in April, Jazz Appreciation Month, right on International Jazz Day. And you've got some amazing musicians with you. How did you bring this all together?
Pure intentionality. Pure intentionality. I had called Jake Graticelli in August and said I wanted to put out a project. Can we get to work on it? And he told me what was going to be needed, what he needed. And I hung up the phone with him. 2020. I told him I wanted to put out something. And once we got off the phone, or Zoom, I always call Zoom the phone. When I hung up Zoom, it was overwhelmingly obvious that I was preparing to put out another record that nobody was going to hear. And I did not want that to happen. So I needed to really do some market research and to understand what would it take for a larger audience to be introduced to my music, and for the fullness of my audience to be enticed to want to purchase the music and to consume the music, and for people to want to present it. That was a challenge, because jazz itself has many different factors and factions, and it is not as closely tracked as other genres of music, from a marketing standpoint, to a financing standpoint. Usually the old adage is that the more money you sink into something, the better chance you have of it doing better. You can't always say that with jazz. That's something you can always say that, because the audience that's going to consume it makes up, consuming. And I always like to preface when I say music consumption for those who are watching doesn't mean those who like or enjoy the music. That doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that someone who might like jazz or whatever. It means the person who is moved to go and actually intentionally seek it out to purchase this genre of music in all of its forms and how it's distributed, and be purchased to buy tickets to support those said artists, regardless of what those ticket prices are. And so it makes up about 1.1% of the population. And to put that in context, to those who've ever been to Washington, D.C., the Park on 14th, that place can get standing about 800 people in there. If you follow the same logic of that, I'd ask the owner, like, why don't you like jazz? Well, jazz really does not work for my venue, because out of that many people, just simply from consumer point of view, only 1.1% of 800 people equals to what? Like 8 people,
right.
9 people in a sense, you know what I mean? And so if that's the case, 8 people out of 800 people, that's not a money situation. Yeah. So I had to then remove myself to say, well, am I going to make this album to make money? Am I going to make this album to make a statement? Am I going to make this album to reach people? And once I started honing down on what my intentionality was going to be, then I finished writing the music. And I did not call Sam Prather to be my music director until I had finished writing the last piece of music. And we decided which musicians we wanted to be on the project. When I called Chris Funn, I asked Chris, I said, Chris, would you be on the album? He said, absolutely. When do you need me? And I asked if he would be up to contributing in some way. So he wrote Lonely. He wrote the song Lonely for me on the album. And I put the lyrics to it. And then we got Dana Hawkins. And Dana and I have been friends. And Dana said, yeah, I'll come through. Herb Scott, many people know him because he's executive director of the Capitol Hill Jazz Foundation. And he has the Jazz Jam at Mr. Henry's. He said, absolutely, bro, I got you. And then I asked Steve Arnold if he would do some transcribing for me for my rehearsals. And he asked if he could also do some arranging to kind of help me put some of these things together so it could really pop. And I wanted to take the Motown approach, many, ears to make sure we were putting forth a strong product. And so that's what we did. And we decided to record at Tonal Park and got Charlie Pilzer there to do it. That's at a Grammy Award-winning studio. We got Jake Graticelli, of course, to mix. And we got Emily Lazar there in New York with the Lodge. She actually is the person who mastered it. And she said, I want to ride with you I want you to ride this all the way through the journey to see what we can make happen of this. And so if there are any Grammy voters out there, please for your consideration, the Pride album, all of this stuff, I want you to know that this is some good music. I want you to listen to it. It was an honor the other night to finally do an in-person album release for Blues Alley. Yes. As their first in-person show that was presented at the Press Club. They did not present in their space. So I was honored to be their first person since the pandemic began to open up their space in a sense with this project. And
also great because Blues Alley, of course, had been going through the space issues. I'm so glad that they're continuing the program where they can and that you kick that off. That's cool. I do want to give the folks a taste of one of the songs from your album. Can you intro this one for us?
We are doing, which song are we? I'm sorry, which one are we doing?
If it
only took love. If Only Took Love was inspired by Lionel Lyles, who plays saxophone down here. I was going through a breakup, believe it or not, and it was not going well. And I told him in the car, I said, man, I would keep this girl around because I just love her. I love her so much. He said, well, Aaron, if it only took love. And from that moment, I went to the bar and on a piece of napkin, I started to write. And that's how this song came about.
Here it is. If It Only Took Love, Aaron Myers.
If It Only Took Love. Now, this song here was written, I can tell you now, was written by chance after going through a breakup and talking to a musician. And I simply said, well, I love her to death. And he simply replied to me, if it only took love. And I thought about that. If it only took love. And I began to write that particular scenario. Life would be easy. Relationships would be much easier if it only took love.
If it only took love, it would last a lifetime. And when I saw you laying next to me, you'd always be mine. That is not the case. And as the stars shine above, I'd still have you. If it only took love, if it only took love, these tears would go away. And when you'd come home to me, baby, you'd be coming home to stay. This is not the case. And as the stars shine above, I'd still have you. If it only took love. When I first met you, all of my bells began to ring. The very thought of you made my heart begin to sing. But now that you've gone away, my world began to shake. I'd be there to love you again, if that's all it would take. If it only took love, the sun above would always shine. There'd be no more sleepless nights, baby, with you right by my side. That is not the case. And as the stars shine above, I'd still have you. If it only took love. When I first met you, all of my bells began to ring. The very thought of you made my heart begin to sing. Now that you've gone away, my world began to shake. I'd be there to love you again, if that's all it would take. If it only took love, the sun above would always shine. There'd be no sleepless nights, baby, with you right by my side. But that is not the case. And as the stars shine above, I still have you. I would still have you. I still have you. If it only took love.
Wow. That's gorgeous, man. If it only took love.
If it only took love, let me tell you, this life would be completely different if it only took love. And I've always said I've been the king of first dates And I've also been the king of it not working out. I'm getting almost there, just almost there, but not quite making it happen. I do want children. I still want to get married at some point. Not at some point. I want, my biological clock is beyond ticking. And girls always say that you can have kids until you're 90. Who wants to be on a walker with your kid who's also on a walker? Like, nobody. I don't want to share that experience with my child. I want to be able to enjoy it. Like I'm planning my 20-year school reunion now. And well, sort of planning it. This guy got a party bus for us. All 39 of us. My class of 39 people. But like literally, like, I used to feel so bad about those girls who were pregnant our senior year. And now they were the smartest of all of us. Now they're getting ready to enter their 40s, and they'll be able to go on cruises without the kids and this, that, and the other.
Yeah, the second life.
And here I am about to try to start this stuff all over. That's just crazy. I'm looking forward to it.
Right. But you've given birth to this album, the Pride album.
Yes.
And the book, by the way, Tall Tales and Lessons Learned, which I think is genius the way you've put this thing together, and you've paired it with different courses and drinks.
Yes.
That is
so the idea,
multi-layered experience.
like literally, I think for one of these chapters, with either a song, like lesson 10, the lesson is, unlike people, the notes never change. Just like people, the notes never change. And the song I'll ask people listen to is "I Love a Piano" by Irving Berlin, which is one of my favorite songs. And that kind of, if you listen to that and then read the chapter, it helps out. This lesson 12, bad days bring good material, and the food is ramen noodle surprise. So get you some ramen noodle and add whatever you want to in there for the little surprise or whatever, So
I love
it's
that.
different things,
And the chapter on sex.
It's pecan pie, honey. And that chapter, if anybody just wants to go right to it,
yes.
Hold on, that is chapter. Let's see here. Chapter, is it 15? Because I write a letter. I should write lesson 15, pecan or coconut chess pie, and the title of that is "Sex is Great, Pie is Better." And here I write a letter to my first, just so you all, and I'll read just, it's not a long letter. It says, "Dear first, I'm sorry. You deserve better in all matters of the terms. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and my sincerest prayer for you is that someone has pleased you much better after me, because it surely couldn't have been worse. Sincerely, your first."
Wow. That is hilarious. Where can we get the book and the album? Tell the people.
So you can get the book right off of Amazon. By the way, Tall Tales and Lessons Learned. Aaron Myers. And my first book is there too. White People Talking to White People, broaching the topic of race with your white friends. You can pick up those books. Both are good reading. And then my album you can get on all of your streaming platforms. I really support Bandcamp. If you want to get the Pride album, go there so artists can actually get the money, because and Bandcamp also reports to Billboard, which is very important. Spotify, if you're a premium user, you have the option to download it. If you're not a premium user, you can follow me, like me, and just like the songs. If you're on iTunes, have Apple Music. I think iTunes is going away. Apple Music, download the music and download it to your device. If you're iTunes, buy it if you can. All of these things are different ways to get the album. I think I'm on Xbox Music too. I mean, Tidal, the Pride album, Aaron Myers. You can get it on all of the platforms. And I need your support. Like me, most of all on Spotify, because although Spotify does not pay us worth anything, it's over 170 million people who utilize it, and having likes and followers apparently means something to people who like to book you. So that's right. A big thing.
Awesome. Well, best of luck to you. You are just an incredible, well-rounded man here with, a powerful purpose. And you just keep on giving back in the process of creating, continuing to create. So thank you.
I would ask if the people who are watching in San Francisco, they're doing an interesting pilot right now around universal basic income for artists. They did a pilot program that started this month with $1,000 given monthly to, I believe, 130 artists. They're not even through the month yet. They've already expanded it from 6 months to 18 months, and they've expanded the amount of artists and added $6 million more into the fund. I don't believe that starving art is normal. It's the equivalent of talking about the importance of essential workers and frontline workers without giving them $15 as a minimum wage. There's no reason why artists should contribute their entire lives to a genre of art and have to do a GoFundMe at the end of their life, or not even able to get life insurance during their life. And if we could, in different municipalities, there in New York, here in Washington, we could urge our city councils and our government to offer a minimum basic income to artists, so that when unemployment is done for many artists in September, they will not be forced to go back to $100 a night gigs, or like there in some places in New York, $60 a night gigs, where people can barely eat or function. It makes no sense. There's no excuse. And we should not go back, leave this pandemic going back to bad behavior or routines that were not healthy, or things that could not sustain us as human beings. We are artists. We're not furniture. We eat and we breathe, and we must survive.
Right, man. And you know, firsthand, coming out of this pandemic, you did work trying to get artists paid during the pandemic. And, it's just unfortunate that lots of people, being musicians, don't have savings and, that backup income. So when this pandemic hit and people were literally out of work, people
hungry,
suffered.
hungry, scared, sick. A lot of times, no family that they could turn to. There's not even an option to save when you're only getting paid $60 to $100 a gig. I want us to really think about that. And so there should be no such thing as a free show. You go out there and you pay artists what they deserve.
Not in exposure.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need the exposure. There's a such thing it's called indecent exposure at that point.
Yes,
and I don't need you to do that to me. I don't want you to criminalize who I am. I want to be paid appropriately. 1917, Duke Ellington was making $100 a gig on U Street in Washington, D.C. Either inflate the number to what it would be nowadays, or let's come together and make something happen that's correct. But many of us, I'm 37, so I've played the piano for almost 35. I'll be 38 next month. I played the piano since I was 3. I don't take all that I've learned in 35 years and come to a place and expect $100 for a 3-hour gig. That cannot happen for anybody. As many other people as we've seen, Steve Noversall and a lot of other people. I know we're running out of time, but we have got to ensure that our artists are fairly compensated. And we need the audience to ensure that happens. We need our policymakers to ensure that happens. And musicians have to stick up for themselves to ensure that happens.
That's right. Well, that is the perfect note to close on here. Thank you so much, Aaron Myers. I appreciate you. Absolutely. Be sure to check him out. Give him your website and social media.
Aaron2.me. AARON, 2.me is my website. Aaron Myers on Twitter. Aaron L. Myers on Instagram. Find me, DM me, slide in the DMs. I'll slide back.
I love it. Thank you for joining me here on The Pulse. I appreciate you, Aaron. Have a great night.
You too. I'm heading to the jam.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too.